Imagine this. The Galactic Council, the supreme governing body of the universe, has just issued an ultimatum to humanity. They demand surrender, compliance, and submission to their interstellar laws, warning that resistance would mean annihilation. To them, Earth is just another primitive world, a minor annoyance to be brought to heel like so many before. But what they fail to understand is that humanity is not like the others. We do not kneel, we do not surrender, we do not break. This ultimatum was meant to be the end of the discussion. The Council had spoken. Their vast fleets, spanning hundreds of star systems, were ready to enforce their will. They had done it before, many times. Empires that resisted were erased from existence, their civilizations reduced to mere footnotes in the galactic archives. The Council's demand was simple. Humanity must relinquish its independence, dismantle its military, and hand over control of all interstellar assets. Earth would become a mere vassal, its people subject to the rule of beings who saw themselves as our betters. But they made a grave mistake. They underestimated us. See, the Council had never faced a species like humanity. They had encountered warlike civilizations before, yes, but never one that was both warlike and adaptable, both fearless and unpredictable. They had never faced a race that turned every hardship into strength, every challenge into an opportunity, and every threat into a reason to push further. At first, the governments of Earth were divided, just as the Council had predicted. Some wanted to negotiate, to avoid war at any cost. Others, particularly those who had seen firsthand what submission meant for other species, knew better. The evidence was undeniable. Cultures erased, histories rewritten, entire planets stripped of their resources until they were nothing but lifeless husks. And so, a decision was made. A message was sent back to the Council, one that shocked the entire galaxy. We reject your ultimatum. Come and take what you think is yours, if you dare. The response was met with disbelief. No species had ever refused outright, not in recorded history. The Council dismissed it as human arrogance, a last-ditch attempt at defiance before their inevitable fall. But what they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. We had watched, we had studied, we had learned. Humanity's expansion into space had always been met with resistance. The Council had sabotaged our progress, ensuring that Earth never advanced too far, never posed a threat to their carefully maintained order. But despite their interference, humanity had built defenses, designed weapons, and developed technology far beyond what the Council believed possible. And now, with war looming, we would finally unveil our greatest secret. But before we get into that, every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, HFY Chronicles-849 is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us grow this community together, because what happens next will change everything. The Galactic Council's ultimatum was supposed to be final. It was a demand backed by centuries of absolute power, enforced by the largest military fleet the universe had ever known. To them, Earth was just another rebellious world that needed to be corrected, a defiant child refusing to obey its elders. But humanity's response was something the Council had never encountered before: outright defiance. The decision to resist was not made lightly. Earth was technologically inferior. At least that's what the Council believed. In truth, humanity had been forced to advance in secrecy, hiding its breakthroughs, disguising its growing power. The Council had long imposed restrictions on Earth's technological development, placing covert agents in key positions across our institutions, ensuring that we remained stagnant. Any attempt to develop interstellar travel beyond what they allowed was met with sudden, unexplained failures. Rockets exploding, research facilities mysteriously burning down, scientists disappearing without a trace. For decades, humanity had played along. We pretended to be limited, ignorant of the greater workings of the galaxy. But behind the scenes, we were watching. We were learning. And, most importantly, we were preparing. So when the ultimatum arrived, when the Council finally revealed its hand, Earth's leaders already knew what had to be done. The United Nations, once a fractured organization bogged down by bureaucracy, became something new, something unified. The old divisions between nations, the endless political games, all of it was set aside for one singular purpose: survival. A secret council, one that had been operating in the shadows for years, stepped forward. The leaders of humanity's hidden military projects, the classified research facilities, the off-world colonies, the deep space weapon platforms, finally unveiled what they had been working on. It was time for the council to see the truth. Humanity had never been stagnant. We had never been weak, and we were far more prepared than they could possibly imagine. Our scientists had cracked gravity manipulation decades ago, studying the effects of black holes and neutron stars to develop technology that rivaled even the most advanced alien civilizations. Our engineers had built ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, vessels that could turn invisible to the naked eye, capable of slipping between dimensions, warping reality itself. And our military, our warriors, were something the Council had never accounted for. See, every species the Council had encountered before had a breaking point. Some civilizations were physically stronger than humans, others were more intelligent. But no species combined raw adaptability, sheer tenacity, and an unmatched capacity for war quite like humanity. We did not fear pain. We thrived in it. We did not retreat in the face of overwhelming odds. We became more dangerous. We did not submit. We evolved. The Council believed their military was invincible. They had trillions of soldiers, fleets large enough to blot out the stars, weapons capable of turning entire planets to dust. But humanity had something far more dangerous than sheer numbers. We had ingenuity. We had studied their ships, reverse-engineered their weapons, learned how their fleets communicated, how their defenses operated. We knew how they thought, how they planned their wars, and most importantly, we knew how to break them. So when Earth's response was sent, it was more than just words. Along with our defiance came a demonstration, a warning to the Council that we were not to be underestimated. Across the galaxy, in a system long thought to be unreachable, one of the Council's oldest strongholds suddenly vanished. Not destroyed, not attacked, simply erased from existence. It was a colony world, home to millions of Council civilians, their most secure research installations, their most advanced shipyards. For centuries, it had stood as a symbol of the Council's dominance, a beacon of their unchallenged rule. And then, in a single moment, it was gone. No explosions, no debris, just an empty void where an entire planet had once been. The Council was stunned. They demanded answers, accused their own military of incompetence, scrambled to understand what had happened. But deep down, they already knew. Humanity had sent a message, and that message was clear. We are not your subjects. We are not your inferiors. You do not control us. And if you seek war, we will bring you ruin. The Council's arrogance had blinded them. They had assumed that humanity's resistance would be brief, that we would crumble under the weight of their power. But now, for the first time in their long history, they felt something they had never felt before: fear. The rulers of the galaxy had issued an ultimatum, believing it to be the final word. But now, as the weight of their mistakes settled upon them, they realized the truth. The final response had not yet been delivered, but it was coming. The moment the Council realized what had happened, panic spread like wildfire through the heart of their empire. A planetary stronghold, one of their most fortified worlds, wasn't just destroyed, it was erased. No wreckage, no survivors, no distress calls. It was as if the planet had never existed, and that terrified them. The Council had ruled for millennia, their power unchallenged, their dominance absolute. They had crushed rebellions, wiped out species, rewritten history to erase those who had dared to resist them. And yet, here was a species, one they had spent centuries trying to suppress, declaring war on them in a way no civilization ever had before. Their analysts scrambled to understand what had happened. Had humanity developed some kind of superweapon? Was it a new form of planetary warfare? Some even speculated that Earth had unlocked something far more dangerous, technologies that tampered with the very fabric of reality itself. But the truth was far worse than they could have imagined. Because this wasn't a warning shot. This wasn't a show of force. This was humanity telling the Council that the war had already begun. Across the galaxy, silent weapons began activating. For decades, humanity had played the part of the primitive species, pretending to struggle, while secretly embedding itself deep within the galactic infrastructure. The Council's technology, their communication networks, their hyperspace lanes, they had all been infiltrated, altered in ways too subtle for them to notice. And now, at the push of a button, entire star systems began to shut down. Warp gates, the colossal structures that allowed for faster-than-light travel between systems, were suddenly inoperative. Council fleets, stretched thin across their empire, found themselves stranded, their supply lines severed. Military installations fell into chaos as defense grids shut down, as targeting systems failed, as their own ships turned against them. In confusion, it wasn't just warfare, it was precision execution. The Council had expected a brute force war, clashing fleets, planetary sieges, drawn-out battles where their overwhelming numbers would crush humanity. But they were playing by the old rules, rules that no longer applied. Humanity wasn't engaging in traditional combat. We were dismantling their entire civilization from within. And then, the second message arrived. You never understood us. You thought we were weak because we lacked numbers, because we lacked an empire. You saw us as primitive, as small. But we were never small. We are everywhere. We are in your systems, in your networks, in your ships. We know how you think, how you fight, how you rule. And now we will show you how we win. The Council was no longer dealing with a rebellious species. They were dealing with an extinction-level threat. Their first response was immediate retaliation. Though cut off from many of their own systems, the Council still commanded countless war fleets, each one capable of reducing entire planets to rubble. Earth was their target. If humanity wanted war, they would bring it straight to our homeworld. But as their armadas set course for Seoul, they found themselves hunted. Across the void, something was moving. Shadows within hyperspace. Ships that did not appear on scanners, did not leave energy signatures, did not obey the known laws of physics. They would flicker into existence for a fraction of a second, just long enough to unleash devastation, then vanish without a trace. The Council's fleets, mighty and overwhelming, began to fall one by one. Battleships lost their engines before. They even knew they were under attack. Dreadnoughts, built to withstand planetary bombardment, crumbled as something cut through their hulls like paper. And the worst part? The enemy remained unseen. The Council had believed that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. But now, as their fleets were torn apart by ghosts, they finally began to understand. They were the prey. And humanity? We had become the hunters. The Council's war fleets had set out with unwavering confidence, believing that humanity would be crushed beneath their might. They had conquered thousands of civilizations before, turned countless worlds into smoldering ruins, and forced entire species into extinction with overwhelming firepower. But as they approached the Sol system, something happened that had never occurred in all their conquests. They lost contact with their fleets. Not a distress signal. Not a single cry for help. Just silence. Entire armadas, each one carrying thousands of warships, simply vanished. No wreckage, no lingering energy signatures, no battle reports. It was as if they had been swallowed by the void itself. At first, the Council dismissed it as a communications failure, a temporary malfunction in their long-range relays. They sent more ships to investigate, war fleets equipped with the most advanced sensor arrays, with the most powerful shielding in their arsenal, and then those fleets disappeared too. Panic gripped the Council. For the first time in history, they were experiencing a war where they weren't the dominant force. They weren't the ones dictating the terms. They weren't the ones delivering ultimatums. They were the ones being hunted. Humanity had never planned to fight a traditional war. We knew we couldn't match their numbers. We knew that if we faced them in open combat, our planets would be reduced to ash before we even had a chance to retaliate. So we changed the game. For decades, our greatest minds had been working in secrecy, building weapons not meant to fight wars, but to end them. At the heart of it all was Project Echo, a classified initiative that had redefined the very concept of warfare. The Council had always relied on numbers, on vast fleets and armies that could overwhelm any resistance. But humanity had developed something far more dangerous. Ships that did not exist in conventional space. Vessels that flickered in and out. Of reality, slipping through dimensions, invisible to every known sensor. A fleet that could appear inside enemy formations, strike with pinpoint precision, and disappear before a single shot could be returned. And then, there were the weapons. The Council had never encountered warfare like this before. Their shields were designed to withstand plasma bombardments, kinetic strikes, and energy disruptors. But none of their defenses could stop a weapon that erased matter at a quantum level. One by one, their fleets were reduced to drifting ghosts in the darkness. The ships that weren't destroyed outright were left crippled, their systems hijacked, their crews trapped in vessels that no longer responded to their commands. And then, for the first time in the Council's long history, a human warship arrived at their homeworld. Not an invasion force, just one ship. It emerged from the darkness of space without warning, bypassing every security measure, every orbital defense, every war fleet positioned around the capital world. Of prime ascendancy. A single vessel, smaller than their largest dreadnoughts, but unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Its hull seemed to shift, adapting to the very fabric of space itself. It didn't reflect light, it absorbed it, making the ship seem like a living shadow. No energy signatures could be detected, no weapons arrays were visible. It was as if the ship itself was an extension of the void. And then, without a single shot fired, it transmitted a final message. Your fleets are gone. Your armies are paralyzed. Your technology has been rendered obsolete. You thought yourselves untouchable. Yet here we stand, at the heart of your empire. And you cannot even scratch us. The message was broadcast across every Council-controlled system, echoing through the halls of their highest chambers, transmitted onto every screen, every communication relay. Then, the human warship did something that shattered the last remnants of the Council's illusion of control. It disappeared. Not into hyperspace. Not through conventional means. It simply ceased to be, as if it had never been there at all. And that was when the Council finally understood. They had not just lost a war. They had lost the future. Everything they had built, everything they had relied on, every system of control they had used to dominate the galaxy. It was all meaningless now. The very foundations of their rule had been torn apart, their greatest strengths turned into weaknesses, and worst of all, they knew there was no way to fight back. Humanity had delivered its message, and now the Council had only one choice left to make. The Council's inner chambers had never been so quiet. The High Lords, the rulers of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, sat frozen in their grand hall, their bioluminescent eyes flickering erratically, a sign of pure, unfiltered terror. Never before had they been forced to confront an enemy like this. They had faced rebellions, uprisings, rogue warlords, even the occasional empire that had tried to challenge their supremacy. But in every one of those cases, they had followed the same strategy: overwhelm the enemy with brute force, annihilate their homeworld if necessary, and rewrite history to erase them entirely. But now, that strategy was meaningless. Their war fleets were gone, not destroyed in glorious battle, not sacrificed in a last stand, but erased, one by one, without a trace. Their hyperspace lanes were compromised. Their central command networks had been infiltrated, their security systems rendered useless. Every strength they had, every pillar upon which they had built their empire, had been turned into a weakness. And worst of all, they still didn't know how humanity was doing it. For all their technological superiority, for all their vast knowledge accumulated over thousands of years, they were blind. The war was over, and they had lost before they even understood the rules. But one truth had become painfully clear. Humanity had evolved beyond conventional warfare. This wasn't just a species that had developed better weapons. This wasn't an empire that had grown more powerful than the Council. This was something else, something terrifying, something unknowable, and now they were here. The Council chambers trembled as a new signal entered their private communication channels. One that no firewall could block, no security system could stop. The transmission came without an origin point, without a traceable source. It simply appeared, as if the message had been embedded within the very fabric of space itself. A voice followed, deep and smooth, speaking not in the guttural, snarling dialects of the Council's own kind, nor in the static, choked speech of lesser races, but in something pure, something refined, something human. You have spent centuries shaping the galaxy in your image. You have dictated the fates of entire species, rewriting history to serve your own needs. You have enslaved, destroyed, and erased those who stood in your way. A pause. Silence. Then, the voice continued, colder now. But you made a mistake. You assumed you could do the same to us. A surge of energy rippled through the chamber. The holographic displays that lined the grand hall flickered violently before a new image appeared. A view from the orbital defense stations that still remained functional. The High Lords looked up, and they saw. Above their capital world, where once their most powerful fleets had stood guard, there was now an ocean of darkness. A vast, unfathomable fleet, stretching beyond the limits of vision, each vessel shifting, flickering, barely perceivable even with enhanced optics. Humanity had arrived, not with an invasion force, not with planetary siege weapons, but with something far more terrifying. A quiet, controlled silence, as if the laws of nature themselves were bending to the will of these new warships. The High Lords could feel it. A presence. A force unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was not a fleet in the traditional sense. It was not an army coming to wage war. It was judgment. And then, the voice returned. You gave us an ultimatum. You sought to control us, to force our surrender, to make us kneel before you, just as so many before us have. A low hum began to vibrate through the chamber. The energy fields protecting the Council's most secure sanctuaries began to waver, as if some unseen force was unraveling them molecule by molecule. But humanity does not kneel. The energy within the room swelled, shifting into something the High Lords had never felt before. It was not heat, it was not force, it was entropy. Reality itself was beginning to decay. Their world, the center of their empire, the very heart of their dominion, was crumbling. Not from orbital bombardment, not from a planetary strike, but from something deeper, something fundamental. The Council Lords, for all their arrogance, for all their belief in their superiority, had finally come to a horrifying realization. Humanity had transcended war. They weren't fighting for resources. They weren't fighting for control. They were reshaping the very foundation of power in the galaxy. And now the Council had a decision to make. The High Lords of the Galactic Council were no strangers to fear. They had crushed planetary rebellions, extinguished entire civilizations, and rewritten history to solidify their dominion. They were the architects of the galaxy's grandest empire, beings who had ruled for millennia, without challenge. But now, in the grand chamber of their capital world, their bioluminescent eyes flickered erratically, a universal sign of terror. The voice from the human transmission was gone, leaving behind only an unnatural silence. But the presence of their unseen adversary remained. It was there, pressing down on the air, warping reality itself. The entire chamber vibrated with an energy they could not explain, an unfathomable force that their most advanced sensors failed to comprehend. The moment felt heavier than the void itself, an oppressive weight settling on their very existence. Then, something changed. The lights within the chamber dimmed, not from a power fluctuation, not from any failure of technology, but as if the very fabric of space around them was being drained of light itself. Their holographic projections flickered before being replaced with something new, something horrifying. It was Earth, the homeworld of humanity. But not as the Council had expected to see it, not from spy drones, not from intercepted broadcasts. This was a live feed. They saw the towering megacities, glowing like constellations against the dark. They saw the industrial behemoths, the sprawling networks of technology that dwarfed even the Council's greatest achievements. They saw the people, billions of them, moving, thriving, advancing at an unfathomable speed. And then, the image shifted. A fleet. An armada unlike any the galaxy had ever known. These were not warships in the traditional sense. No massive cannons. No grandiose battle stations bristling with weapons. Instead, the human vessels were sleek, shifting in form. their hulls seemingly alive with an energy that defied understanding. These were not ships meant for war. They were instruments of control. High Lords realized with dawning horror that humanity was not interested in conquest. They did not come to rule. They did not come to fight. They came to reshape the very structure of power itself. One of the High Lords, a veteran of 1,000 conflicts, tried to issue an order, his voice cracking under the weight of his own panic. Activate planetary defenses. Deploy every remaining fleet. We must. His words died in his throat. The image of Earth vanished. In its place, they now saw their own homeworld. But not as it should be. The skies were dark. The once glorious orbital platforms, the bastions of their mighty fleet, were absent, not destroyed, not in ruins, simply missing. And then, the ground beneath them trembled. The High Lords turned their gaze toward the walls of their grand chamber. Cracks formed in the metal, not from an explosion, not from any external impact, but as if the very molecules of the structure were unraveling. The chamber was built from the strongest alloys in the galaxy, a structure meant to withstand planetary sieges, yet now, it was failing. One of the younger lords, his body shuddering with an uncontrollable tremor, whispered in disbelief, "What? What are they doing?" There was no answer, but the truth was evident. Humanity was not waging war. They were rewriting the rules of existence itself. The Council's greatest strength had always been its control over history. They dictated what civilizations rose and which fell. They erased species from existence, wiped entire cultures from memory. They were the gods of this galaxy, shaping its past, present, and future. But humanity had evolved beyond the need for history. They had transcended war, industry, diplomacy. They had become something else entirely, a force that could not be bargained with, could not be reasoned with. And now the Galactic Council faced the unthinkable. They had lost control. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, they were not the ones dictating terms. They were not the ones deciding the fate of a species. They were the ones being judged. The cracks in the chamber deepened. The High Lords felt it, an unraveling, a distortion of reality itself. Their minds, evolved over centuries to process vast amounts of information, could not comprehend what was happening. It was as if their very existence was being rewritten. Then, a final transmission came through. Your ultimatum failed. You sought to break us, to control us, to shape our destiny in your image. The voice was cold, distant, and absolute. Now, we deliver our response. The chamber collapsed. Their world, once the center of the greatest empire in the galaxy, ceased to exist. Not in fire, not in destruction. It simply ceased, and with it the Galactic Council was no more. The silence that followed was absolute, not the kind born from mere emptiness, but a deeper void, an absence of presence itself. The Galactic Council, the rulers of 1,000 star systems, the self-proclaimed architects of civilization, were gone. Their world did not burn. It did not crumble into dust. It did not even fade. It simply ceased. Across the galaxy, in the hearts of 100 different civilizations, something strange occurred. A ripple passed through the fabric of reality. An invisible wave that left no destruction in its wake. Only a haunting absence. Where once the name of the Galactic Council had been etched into history, only questions remained. Their statues, their archives, their records, all gone. Their war fleets, their planetary holdings, their vast bureaucratic machinery, vanished. It was as if the great empire had never existed at all. But the memory of what happened still remained in the minds of those who witnessed it firsthand. The few species who had secretly rebelled against the Council, those who had whispered of defiance in the dark corners of the galaxy, found themselves staring at empty space where a throne of absolute power once stood. The Council's capital world, once a beacon of supreme authority, was now a void, a literal hole in reality. It was not destroyed, nor was it displaced. It simply was no longer there. No debris, no ruins, no echo of its existence, and the message from humanity lingered in their minds. You sought to break us, to shape our destiny in your image. Now, we deliver our response. For the first time in untold millennia, the galaxy felt something alien to them. Not fear, not war, not oppression. It felt freedom. The dawn of the HFY new order at the heart of human space, in the depths of the Sol system, Earth stood unchallenged. From the shadows of the long-dead Galactic Council's rule, humanity had emerged not as conquerors, not as usurpers, but as something far greater. A force beyond war, beyond politics, beyond the limitations of any civilization before them. The once secretive advancements of the Terran race had come into full display. Their ships no longer operated on conventional physics, but on principles the galaxy did not yet understand. Their technology did not rely on the brute force of energy weapons or kinetic bombardments. Instead, they wielded something far more terrifying. Control over reality itself. The Council had threatened to erase humanity from existence. Instead, it was they who were erased. But humanity did not stop. They did not seek revenge on the lesser civilizations that had once followed the Council's decrees. They did not impose new laws, nor did they demand fealty. Their response had not been a war of conquest. It had been a singular act of cosmic finality, a correction of an imbalance that had festered for too long. For those who remained in the galaxy, a chilling realization set in. The Council's power had been absolute because it was based on control of history, of war, of knowledge. But humans had demonstrated something far greater. They controlled the very rules that governed existence, and that meant there was no war to fight. There was only the future that humanity allowed to exist. The message that echoed through time days turned into weeks, then months, then years. Yet, in all that time, no force rose to challenge humanity. How could they? The galaxy had seen what happened to those who did. Yet, humanity remained silent. No fleets patrolled the borders of their space. No human emissaries demanded tribute or swore new oaths of dominion. The great human vessels, the reality-warping constructs that had made the Council disappear, simply left. Where they went, none could say. The few surviving civilizations whispered theories in hushed voices. Some believed that humanity had transcended, that they had become something beyond even material existence itself, leaving the mortal realm behind. Others claimed that they were still out there, watching, waiting, unseen and unknown. But one truth remained undeniable. Every race in the galaxy understood, from the smallest colonies to the largest empires, that the age of blind domination had ended. The threat of absolute tyranny, the centuries of oppression under the Council's iron grip, were over. Because there was something far greater now, lurking just beyond the veil. A force that did not need fleets to conquer. A force that did not need battles to win. A force that had rewritten the very concept of power itself. And though humanity no longer made its presence known, one message continued to echo through the annals of galactic history, whispered from one generation to the next, a warning, a reminder, a truth. Do not test the patience of Earth. There will not be a second response, conclusion and call to action. The Galactic Council once believed themselves to be gods. They ruled without opposition, dictating the fate of billions. But when they turned their gaze toward humanity, they learned a lesson no other civilization had dared teach them. They had assumed humanity would submit. They had assumed they could break an entire species with a mere ultimatum. They assumed wrong. What do you think? Was humanity's response justified? What would you have done in their place? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this, where humanity stands against impossible odds and triumphs in ways no one expects, make sure to subscribe to HFY Chronicles-849, because this is only the beginning. Humanity's story is far from over.